So today we're going to cover how to buy leather online. And the reason I want to go over this is because I think there's a lot of really great content out there about the different types of leather, chrome tan versus veg tan, and the thickness differences. But I want to help guide you through navigating some of these online sites because I wish it was something that I had when I was picking out my first type of leather. The conclusion that I've drawn is that it is basically too overwhelming to go to one of these sites and try to pick from the hundreds of options that you have in terms of types of leather to actually get the one that you need for your project. So what I'm going to do is give you a system that is going to take 3 simple filters. That way you can apply it to the front end of your search, and then that will narrow down these options into something that will actually be usable for your project. Additionally, I'm going to cover a case in which you don't have a project in mind. So some people start this process and they know that they want to make a wallet or a belt or a tote bag, for example, but there are some cases where people don't have a project in mind. So I want to also consider that point of view. As an added bonus at the end, I will give you a hack that could help you buy even faster. It includes an assumption, but I'll go over that later and discuss what that bonus tip is. The first thing we're going to consider is the weight or the thickness of the leather. And for context, how they measure this is basically how much does 1 square foot of the leather weigh. And this is because leather has a variable thickness. So instead of trying to measure that all the way throughout, they just give a weight of 1 square foot of leather, and that'll give you roughly the thickness all the way throughout the hide. For a more practical example, I looked it up and found out that 3-ounce leather is roughly equivalent to the thickness of a dime. So if you think about a wallet, for example, if you all of a sudden pick up 6-ounce leather and you try to start stacking pockets on top of each other, it will get way too bulky, way too fast. And conversely, if you're looking to make a belt and you use 3-ounce leather, it's going to be way too thin for that application. So we definitely want to pick out the right one. And by using this filter, we're immediately going to get rid of a lot of options that we won't need for our project. The second thing to consider is the temper or the firmness of the leather. And this comes in 3 categories: soft, medium, and firm. And this one's pretty self-explanatory. You definitely want your leather to be able to hold up if it's required to on some of these smaller leather goods. For example, you'll want a medium or firm tempered leather because it's going to take an edge beveler a lot better. It's also going to hold up when you're trying to burnish it. And I would say, even just as a general rule of thumb, unless you're absolutely sure that you need a soft tempered leather for your project, I would just avoid it for your first buying experience and go with a medium or a firm tempered leather. All right, so the third and final thing to consider for our filters is the tannage of the leather, and that comes in 2 categories. There's chrome tan and there's veg tan. So for context, chrome tan leather makes up about 80 to 90% of the manufactured leather that is out there, and it also takes less time to make a chrome tan leather, and that's why you'll typically see a lower price tag attributed to it, although there are some affordable veg tan leathers out there, which I'll get into later. Also, I'm going to be applying a couple of generalizations about these leathers just to simplify the shopping experience for beginners. I know there's going to be some more experienced folks out there that really know the differences between chrome tan and veg tans. I do understand that there are nuances to both of these leathers, and some chrome tans can be used for other applications than veg tan. You don't always need to use a veg tan, but for the sake of simplifying it for the beginner audience, I'm going to talk about 2 specific characteristics that I think are important. So the first one is the burnishing ability of these leathers. And what I mean by that is when you apply toconol or whatever the burnishing agent is to the edge of the leather, so you can think of a wallet, if you put something on the edge and then you try to create some friction and those fibers start to lay down and get that kind of glossy edge that you see some of the leather crafters out there create on their projects, that is going to be from a veg tan leather 99% of the time. There are some chrome tans that can achieve a burnish, although it probably still won't be as good as a burnish that you would get from a veg tan leather. The second thing is wet molding or stamping, I'll call it, or impressions. For wet molding or stamping, that means that you're trying to form it around something. So, say for instance, a gun holster, that is only going to be done using a veg tan leather again. So, if you have a logo, a stamp, or maybe you want to get into tooling, what you would typically do is wet the surface of the leather and then go forth and try to use a stamp or something like that. If you get a chrome tan leather, you are not going to be able to do either of those things. And that is basically across the board. Chrome tans are just not going to accept an impression. They're not going to take in that water that it needs to be able to be stamped. So that's why you would choose a veg tan leather. And I think either of these could be important to a beginner that's starting out. I know it was for me, and it's something I didn't discover until I got my hands on a chrome tan leather and found out that, hey, I'm not going to be able to burnish it, or I'm not going to be able to stamp anything into this. And that's why chrome tan I typically see used for something like a bag, because you're not going to need to stamp something into it, or you're not going to try to mold it around something. All right, so let's put this three-step method to the test and apply it to a project. The example I've decided to go with is a wallet. And for visual context, I've decided to use a recent project that I've been working on, just a simple bifold vertical wallet with a couple of pockets. So we'll look at the thickness here. I'm going to go with a 3 to 3.5 ounce. And the reason I've decided on this is that 3 to 4 ounces is pretty typical in terms of thickness for a wallet. I'm going to go just a bit lighter because there are a couple of pockets that I'm stacking on top of each other. Now I will have the option to skive, but say I didn't have a skiver yet or something like that, I would still go with maybe like a 3 ounce leather, because it'll still be not too bulky when I start stacking all the pockets on top of each other. For the temper, I prefer a firm tempered leather for a wallet, just because it will have some of that rigidity that I'm looking for, especially if it's folding open and shut. Um, a medium would still be acceptable if you want to go with a medium, but there's a few less options in the firm tempered leather, so it could really narrow down what you're looking at, and you'll kind of see that later when I go on the sides. So let's just say I go with the firm tempered leather here. And the final thing I'm going to look at is the tannage. There are some chrome tans that can make some really cool wallets, but I want to achieve that glossy edge, and I also have a logo that I want to stamp into it eventually. So for that reason, I'm going to go with a veg tan leather. So we have our three things to consider here. Let's start hopping over to our first site, which is going to be one of my personal favorites, which is Rocky Mountain Leather Supply. Now, just to give a overview of what we can expect when we hop into looking at all of the leather, we have, as you can see, 347 products that we would have to sort through if we didn't have any of these things to consider on the front end. So you can see, very overwhelming. You have all these different options, but no way to actually simplify it into what you're looking for. So let's go through the tab here and see how we can start to narrow this down. So what I love about Rocky Mountain Leather Supply is they have by application tab. So just right off the bat, you can look through all the different things that you could possibly make, like a bag or a purse or a holster or, again, a wallet right here. So throw the wallet in there, you have 262 products. That's not a huge decrease in the amount that we would have to sort through, but it is something that you can at least throw into one of these filters and see if you can just simplify the process. The beauty of it is that now you have 262 products that you could possibly look through to find something that would be suitable for a wallet. All right, so we can look through our different options. There's leather type, hide type, leather cut, tannery, price, application, and firmness. So a lot of these things I don't think will be as helpful, especially these top options here. But if we look down at the bottom, there is a by firmness section. So there's soft, medium, and firm. And we know already from our things to consider that medium to firm is going to be something that we're going to be looking for. I personally prefer, say, a firm temper on a wallet. So I'm going to pull in firm, and now we can see there's only 46 products after that filter has been applied. This gives us a smaller group of options. Now we can start looking through here and pick out something that we like. And already we've come across one of my favorites for a wallet, which is Butero. It can be pretty pricey, depending on what your budget is. It's, I think, like $100 for a full hide. But what's great about some of these sites is that they offer them in panels as well. So you can see $10.99 for a certain size panel, and they have a 3-ounce panel right there that's already pre-cut. So have one really good option to give ourselves a panel with different colors and everything else that we can go into. Let's go back and look at by firmness again, and then do firm. So again, you have 46 options. You can just look through, see what you like, and maybe you come across another one. Let's do, for example, museum hide. So when you look through here, it's going to say half hide is going to be 7 to 8 square feet, which is quite a lot. They may also have a panel version, so if that's something you want, you can definitely look into it. But let's go down to the characteristics. So we can see veg tan, firmness is going to be 8 out of 10, which is going to be something that we're looking for. And the thickness is going to say 5 ounce. Now what's great about Rocky Mountain Leather Supply is they do offer splitting. And you can see the option here at the top under the size. So you pick out your color, you pick out your size, and then say it's a 5 ounce, but you are doing a wallet. You can now pick from a list of options to do some splitting. So in here they have, starting at no splitting, 5 ounce, all the way down to, it looks like 1.25 ounce, which is pretty thin. So again, we're doing a wallet. We have that 3 to 3.5 ounce, I would say 3 ounce, and then boom, right there, add to cart. We can check out and we have exactly what we need, one hide, and we're done. Now we'll move on to the next site for our same project. Okay, we have our next site, which is Weaver Leather Supply. This is another one of my favorites, and they have a lot of really good options for leather. So let's get right into it. And as you can see from the list, we have a couple options for veg tan. There's a natural veg tan and a dyed veg tan. Assuming most folks are going to want the dyed version unless they want to dye it themselves, but the natural version is just going to be, say, like a white or a cream color, and it's going to be like a blank slate. So for me, I prefer the dyed, but again, this process can be applied to the natural. And we have 34 options to choose from, which is pretty short already, but we can drop in and try to minimize our options even more. So here we go. I'm going to do the leather weight. I can see there's 7 options under the 1 to 3 ounce, which is what we need for our project. And I have a few options to choose from. So 7 here, a lot shorter list that I have to work with. And I see that there's one for $53 for a double shoulder. I didn't really cover the cuts of the hides. This is something that you can look up, but when you're first starting out, it doesn't really matter. You just need enough to get that first project done. So double shoulder is perfectly fine, and it can be a quite cheap option to go to if you don't want to get, say, a whole side of leather, what's going to be 7 to 8 square feet or bigger. So a couple of these are going to have the single shoulder available, which is only $50. We got veg tan. We have a, let's see if we can check for the temper here. So I'm going to drop into different details. And it says right there, the firmer temper on this leather stands up for more structured bags and accessories. So I can tell that it's going to be a little bit more firm as it states right there. Firm temper, again, it mentions it a second time, so it says it in a couple of different spots. Now we have our 3-ounce firm tempered veg tan leather, and as long as there's a color in here that I like, and the flesh side looks good to me, this is another great option that we can go to for the project at 53 bucks. Our last site here is going to be Buckleguy, and let's see how quickly we can filter through these results. So when you open up their leather section, right away it's very overwhelming. There's so many different things to choose from, but I think if we just keep our focus on those 3 characteristics, we can cut this down super quickly. So let's go through our easy steps again. So we're going to start with firm, but you can again do medium or whichever you would like for this. And then on the left side of the menu here, we're going to have even more options to cut down what we need. So we definitely need vegetable tan, and we definitely need a 2.5 to 3 ounce or 3.5 to 4 ounce. So we could check both of those boxes or just one, and then all of a sudden we are left with 60 options to choose from. Very straightforward. Now we can just go through these 60 options, pick one that we like, and we know that we're going to get exactly what we need to finish that wallet. So pick one, drop it in your cart, and then purchase, and you're done. Okay, so now we're going to look at if you don't have a project in mind. So you're completely blank, you have no idea what you're going to work on. How should I break this down? That way I can sort through those options to get exactly what I need again. So in terms of weight or the thickness, I would say for something pretty universal, something that you would be able to make a lot of different things on, I would go with a 4 to 5 ounce. This can still cover some of your more minimalist wallets. You can still use a 4 ounce to make something like that, or skive it down to make something a little bit thinner. You may be able to use it to make a bag or a purse or a pen case. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more generic and you don't know a project, 4 to 5 ounce is a great option and one that I would suggest. In terms of the temper, I would just go medium. This is going to be your average project. Something that you need is just going to be a medium temper. Unless you know that you are going to want to work with a soft leather, maybe it doesn't need as much edge work or something like that. But I feel like for most products, a medium to more firm temper is going to be more likely what you're going to go for. Tannage, I would recommend still going with the veg tan, especially if you plan to make something that is going to have an edge, or if you're going into something more bag or purse, you can also include chrome tan in that. You can shop around for a chrome tan if you like, but to keep it simple, I would say veg tan is most likely what you're going to want, because then you could do both. You could do the burnishable stuff and you could do the non-burnishable, but chrome tan kind of limits you a little bit in terms of what you could actually make with an edge. Although you could still make those products, it just won't give you that ability to burnish it at the end. So now we have that. Let's go back to one of our sites. We have Weaver Leather Supply here. I'm going to drop back into their leather. And something I recommend, if you don't have a project in mind, I would not go, in terms of the veg tan, I would not go with something that's dyed. You still can if you would like and get whatever you would want, but that's going to be a little bit more expensive, especially if you're just starting out and on a budget. It may be worth your time to explore the natural options. Now, natural veg tan is that blank slate. It's got no dye. It's ready to be tooled or wet molded or burnished, whatever you want to make it into. So I would highly recommend the natural veg tan. There's only 20 products to choose from here. You can drop in, give yourself that 4 to 7 ounce, and then you have some really cheap options here to work with. I see $26. I see, let's see, 77, 39, 15. I mean, right here, 15 bucks for a natural strap belly. We can look through our options, 3 to 4, 4 to 6. This is a really solid choice. If you want to look into the specifications, you can do that. It's very economical, like it mentions. It's good if you're just starting out and you want an affordable way to get into the craft. You can carve it, you can mold it, you can tool it and stamp it, everything else, without needing to pay that really high price tag for something that may be dyed or maybe just a little bit more expensive from a really top dollar tannery, you can just start right here, 15 bucks, and get a few of these even, start making some really good projects. If you have a tote bag or purse or something else that you want to make that's a little bit bigger, I would just be a little bit more cognizant of how big this is, because that size of a hide, you may not be able to actually cut out a big enough panel to get what you want. But again, there's some really good options on the previous page to look through that would be affordable for that. All right, so now for the bonus tip that I hinted at the beginning of this video, and I think it's a really great hack to get you to buying your leather a lot faster with a lot less hassle. Now, this is assuming that you have seen other leather crafters out there, or you have a favorite that you really like or that you pay attention to. One of mine that I really like and admire is STR Handmade. They make a lot of really great wallets and everything else. And when I was first getting started into leathercraft, they were one of the brands that I really followed. So I'm just going to look through some of their posts here and see if I like any of these projects that they've worked on. I see a wallet right here that looks great. I think that's really cool. I like the look of this leather. And what I can do now is just look in this post, and I can see in the description that it says hashtag Pueblo leather. That to me signals what kind it is, so I can just close it out, pop over here to Rocky Mountain Leather Supply, and then boom, punch in Pueblo. Now I have options to look at some of the Pueblo hides and say, I just want a panel to just test it out. I can get a panel of Pueblo leather for $22 at 9 by 16. That's perfect for a small project. I can do the splitting that I want to make sure it's whatever thickness that I would like. I can do a little bit bigger of a panel if I want. And there I have an option to do the olive, which it looks like they're using in the STR Handmade post. So right there, that just gives me a really simple option to get a really nice leather that I know is going to work for a wallet because somebody else has already used it to make this same product that I'm looking for. So instead of trying to go through all of these notes and the weight and the temper and the tannage, these are things that you still want to look at, but there's something that you can already get from a product that you already love. I think this is just a really simple way. Look at some of your favorite creators, learn from what they've already learned. They obviously know these are great leathers for these products, and they've done their research and everything else. You can steal a little bit from their information or their expertise. And the leathercraft community is very open with what we know. At least the people that I've interacted with are very open. So if they have a post or something like that and you want to know the weight or the tannage or whatever it may be about the project or the leather, you can just ask them in the comments, or some folks like STR here, they mention it in the actual post itself, and then work out maybe one or two other details, and then boom, you can just purchase that leather directly. You already know it's perfect for the project, and then your leather buying process is done. So I just think that's a really cool way to get exactly what you need. Borrow from people that know, use the knowledge that's already out there. If somebody, if there's a creator out there, a leather crafter out there that you really like, and maybe they don't put the leather with it or the thickness or something else, feel free to tag me in it. I'm on Instagram and YouTube, or I have a website. You can send me a message and say, hey, I really want to know what kind of leather this is. Can you help me out? I wouldn't shy away from commenting on some of these videos or posts and just ask them straight up. I'm sure they would offer it because they would have no reason to hide that information, but I would also happily take a look for you and try to respond the best I can to say, yeah, that's this type of leather with this thickness. You can go here to buy it even, but it's definitely something to consider for sure. All right, so that's my quick method for getting yourself your first hide to work on, or one of your first hides to work on in your next leathercraft project. Feel free to apply this to any site. Let me know if it doesn't work out for you. Maybe you buy a leather and you use this method and it didn't work out. I would also like to know that feedback. I think that it will work out very well for you, but there may be caveats or something that I didn't think of. So I'm always looking ways to improve the information that I give everybody. But to me, I think this is just a really short and simple way to do it. So thank you for watching.